Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Multifamily Summit. I'm Sarge, and it's my absolute pleasure to kick things off today. We're about to dive into a wealth of knowledge and strategies that can truly transform your multifamily investment journey. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, you're in the right place. But before we get started, let me introduce the person who's going to lead us through this experience, a true expert with decades of experience in the multifamily space. He's not only built incredible success for himself, but has helped countless others do the same through his coaching and mentorship. Please join me in welcoming your host, Mike Morawski.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Day 2 of the summit. Okay. Hey, yesterday was pretty epic, wouldn't you say? There was a lot that came across the stage, a lot we learned, a lot we got. If we look at some of the highlights from yesterday, we had Matt Faircloth yesterday morning who talked about, the entire process, really getting started and scaling, and a lot of tools to use in your syndication business. We had Karen Hall on talking about self-directed IRAs. Then Mike Angelo, who, just 4 years ago, didn't have any multifamily assets, and today over $60 million under management. We had Dugan Kelly on, who talked about the legal aspects of the multifamily business, and Chad Coe, who talked about getting your financial house in order and the mindset around it. You know what? We're building momentum here, and we're building for even a more powerful day today. I think the lineup today is even greater than yesterday, and yesterday was pretty good. Well, welcome back. I'm glad that you're here today. Looking forward to a great day again. Great speakers. If you are checking in, check in the chat. Drop in, say hi, say where you're from. And you know what I'd really like to see? I'd really like to see a couple of ideas or thoughts that you got yesterday. We have the workbook, right? We had the workbook that we were working through yesterday. And what did you put down as key takeaways on those back pages? What were some key takeaways that you took away yesterday? I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to also hear where you drew a line in the sand, and what's the next step or some next action that you're going to take. While you're checking in around that, I want to just, again, thank my team and all the effort that everybody's put in. Joel at Star Maker Marketing and his team, and Rain, thank you very much. If you want to pop in and say hi, would love to see you this morning.
Hi guys, good
Hey,
morning.
Rain, how's it going?
Everything's cool. Don't forget the chat is open, so if you need any help, just send a message. I'm here to help you.
Looking for an epic day again today. And remember, if you need anything, you want to check in with Rain. She's going to be monitoring the chat again, and we'll be taking any questions or comments, and we'll get those out throughout the day. I really want to give a big thanks to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, this does not happen. I really appreciate everything that they put in to this event, helping us be supportive. But our sponsors, Star Maker Marketing, CSSI, the Cost Segregation Company, Northern Bank, 1031. We heard from Michelle Fitzpatrick yesterday, who gave us a really detailed process on the 1031 exchange. And, today we're going to really focus in a lot on tax planning this morning. And the first couple of speakers will be around tax planning. But yesterday, if you think about the 1031, that's a huge tax planning strategy for your investors and for you as a GP or a sponsor on running your multifamily deals. We've got UDirect, Karen Hall yesterday. She spoke about self-directed IRAs, but UDirect is always a great sponsor, have been for years. Capitalist Pro. Here, I can't urge you guys enough. This afternoon, I'm doing an event with Dallin Schultz. And Dallin is the CEO and founder of Capitalist Pro. And these guys were just capital raisers. And they wanted to find a better solution for raising capital. And so they built a platform. And we've switched over to it. So our team has switched over to it on the capital raising side. And boy, has it made things simpler and a lot easier. But we're going to talk about that. A lot of talk today about capital raising. We had Co-Financial, Chad Coe yesterday. He talked about financial planning, getting your financial house in order, some of the mindset around that and behind that. So, and Kelly Clark, we had Dugan on yesterday that really laid it out about the legalities, right? How do we create a syndication? How does the LLC work? How do we do joint ventures? How do we raise capital legally, right? How do we make people part of our GP team? All of the steps along the way. You know, I talked about coaching yesterday afternoon, but one of my sessions in my coaching is the anatomy of a syndication. And we go into depth in the anatomy of a syndication about the layout of the legalities in those syndications. So if you are somebody who's maybe been thinking about coaching, that some of that resonated for you last night, you still have today to get registered and take advantage of that 50% off that I offered yesterday, which is pretty epic deal, I would say. You know, if I think back when I first got into the real estate business as in the apartment side, because when I was selling real estate, I had a coach, and I actually still have two coaches in my life today. So, you know, and it's been years, and you know, every couple of years I change my coach because you learn something new from somebody new. I had a coaching client, a real quick story. I had a coaching client that I worked with for a little over 2 years, and I could really feel our relationship kind of just, you know, plateauing. And I said to him, I said, Seth, I think that we're at a point here where, you know, you're not really getting any more growth. And I said, you know, I think it might be time for you to go find a different coach, somebody to help you go to the next level. You know, because when you work with somebody for a period of time, you kind of get in this relationship and this routine, and you're really not benefiting them much more from a coach's perspective. And from a client's perspective, they're not getting enough. So, you know, that change of a coach every couple of years, a mentor, a new accountability partner, those things help you grow your business. You know, the one thing I will say is when I sold residential real estate and had a coach, I grew my business every year by 20% a year. And I can equate my capital raising efforts, and I can equate my syndication efforts and underwriting efforts to everything I learned in that coaching process 20 years ago. So, you know, it definitely is something that will benefit you and will help you grow and get to the next level. But huge thanks to our sponsors. Really appreciate it. I'd love to talk about a couple of comments. Rain, did anybody throw any key takeaways in the chat that they got from yesterday? Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Las Vegas, LA, New York
Everyone's
City.
still settling inside the webinar. So yeah, guys, don't be shy. You can put in any of the comments that you have, any key takeaways that you have for yesterday.
Yeah, here's what I know. You know, yesterday there was a lot of information, a lot of different speakers. Same thing will happen today. A lot of different speakers, a lot of different information. But there had to be some key takeaways that you walked away with yesterday. You know, when I think about some of the speakers that spoke yesterday, you know, Matt Faircloth, I was watching his PowerPoint presentation yesterday morning. And as the slides went by, I was getting ideas on maybe how to upgrade my slide presentation, my thesis, that when I talk to investors about raising capital and investing in our multifamily deals. And he actually had a couple of slides that I said, wow, those are very simple and concise. What a great way to put information together. And it was just small blocks with a couple of graphs. And I thought, wow, you know, rather than putting complete financial data into a slide deck, where you can put that on the InvestNext platform, and you can put your rent rolls and T12s and your underwriting on the InvestNext platform. Anybody who's a passive investor with our group, knows that that's where they can go get updated information, and they can get details on properties and how properties are running and what we're looking at buying. But I just thought that for that, when you're presenting to a potential investor, maybe you're doing a webinar, or maybe you're doing a live presentation, or maybe you're just sitting having lunch with somebody going through a flip chart, right? I think that every real estate investor who's syndicating multifamily should put together a thesis on what their business is. And if you want a copy of something that we have, our thesis, just let Rain know, and we'll get that sent out to you next week. But it's a great idea to just have a slide deck that doesn't talk about a specific deal. They say raising capital, the best time to do that is in between deals, when you don't have a deal. We should always all be talking to investors about investing into multifamily real estate or whatever your asset class is. And, the thesis should go through and talk about who you are, your bio, your group, your team. It should go through and talk about the product classes. It should go through and talk about the returns, tax benefits that they can get. And by putting a thesis together like that, what you do is now you become more familiar with it. So I just thought that in Matt's presentation yesterday, that some of those slides were really clear and very helpful. So that was one of my big key takeaways yesterday. Rain, anybody else? Let's see. Tyler said the panel yesterday was very enlightening. He loved how John Kasman talked about not waiting for the perfect time to get in the game. God, Tyler, I think that that's a great check-in this morning. I couldn't agree with John more on that point, right? I think I mentioned yesterday that I spoke at an event in Seattle, and it was a GoBundance event. And there was a guy who spoke at the event, and boy, I can't remember his name right now. I apologize. But Brian somebody, and he was sort of an economist, right? He was more to the neutral side than one side or the other. But what he said was that it does not matter who's in office. It doesn't matter what interest rates are, whether they're high, whether they're low. It doesn't matter if we're at war. You know what? Real estate is going to continue to go up in value. And the more you get involved, I think I said this yesterday, there's two times you can plant a tree, right? You can plant it 20 years ago, or you can plant it today. Where do you want to be? But I think the more action you take, whether it's underwriting, whether it's looking at markets, going through the market traps, Forrest talked a lot yesterday about market traps, and, you really need to hone in on where you're going to be. And then remember that every market has submarkets in it. If we look at Tampa has 15 submarkets. Chicago has 78 submarkets. So you have to zone in on those submarkets also. So I thought that, come off the sidelines. If you're a passive investor thinking about investing in real estate, but you're worried about what's going to happen in November, you know what? Why does it matter? If you're an active investor who's thinking, boy, I'd like to get into the multifamily business, is now the good time? I believe it's always a good time. There's just times that are better than others. I think the greatest comment Forrest said yesterday, and he and I have had a number of conversations on this, is there's no geniuses in this business. There's only cycles, and there's market cycles. And it comes down to where we're at in the market cycle. And matter of fact, Rain, you know what? I'm going to shoot you real quick this market cycle chart. And I want to see if you can possibly throw a PowerPoint up real quick, all right?
Alrighty.
And we'll come back and talk about that. So
So we've
Linda
got,
said that
yeah,
the phrase from Forrest was her biggest takeaway, no geniuses, just cycles. And that's kind of what we were just talking about. So Jennifer said that she'd love to have a copy of the thesis. So let's make sure that we make a note, Rain, and get that to Jennifer next week.
definitely.
Peter,
Peter said,
multifamily
yep,
is a,
something.
say it again.
Peter said something, yeah.
Yep. Peter said that multifamily is a business. We need to put systems and processes and people in place in order to have a successful and profitable investment. Peter, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, it comes down to systems and processes, and it really comes down to people. It comes down to the team that you've assembled. And, you know, one of the things I always encourage people is, hey, figure out what you're really good at. Maybe you're really good at underwriting, finding deals and underwriting. Maybe you're really good at raising capital. Maybe you're really good at the compliance stuff. You know, my business partner is awesome when it comes to compliance. So anything that has to do with legal paperwork, whether it's the SEC PPMs, the offering documents, the LLC agreements, insurance, financing, and she keeps all that in order. She takes care of the bookkeeping. She takes care of the marketing. And you know what? You need somebody on your team to take care of that. See, I'm a big picture guy myself. So I have more of a vision. I'm more of a visionary. So when it comes to the details like that, having somebody on your team who's detail oriented and make sure that we're in compliance on everything, I couldn't ask for more than that. And I was kind of hoping she was going to be on this morning, but she's not. So yeah, and then systems and processes. So when you look at systems and processes, what's your underwriting system? How do you do that? What tools do you use? What underwriting tool do you use? And then when you're in the underwriting process, how are you putting a stress test on deals? And what are you looking for in the in the rent growth, in the expense growth? And remember, ask a lot of what if questions. You know, when you build a funnel, one of the big factors in a funnel is if something happens. So if this person opens this email, or if this person opens this text, or if they don't, you know, so in the funnel structure, there's a lot of ifs. I've been a what if guy for a long time, and I ask a lot of hard questions. So when my coaching clients or my underwriter bring me a deal and we start to dissect the deal, I ask a lot of what if questions. What if rents don't go up? What if this projection isn't right? What if we can't get a handle on some of the expenses? What if financing changes before we get to closing? What if we have to hold this property longer? What if we can't buy it at this price? So you have to start to ask those questions during that process in order to get a better perspective of, you know what, if my math doesn't work, what if? Rain, do you have that yet?
Yes, I have it. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, if
So
you want to just share
yeah,
your screen and throw that slide up, that'd be great. And
that would be nice.
so we'll talk about this for a couple of minutes.
Okay. Can
So,
you
you
see
know,
it?
when we talk about market cycles, here's what we look at, right? You know, Forrest referred to Glenn Mueller's book yesterday on real estate finance, and this graph is out of that book. But you can see, and who knows how long these cycles go for, right? I mean, we've seen these cycles over the years, last 8 years, last 16 years, and sometimes 5 to 7 years. So it depends where you're at. But you can see in phase one, you know, you have the recovery phase, right? And if we're in phase four right now, down on the right-hand corner, where we have increasing vacancies, more completions, more product coming on the market, you know, we're going to wind up back over on the left side in phase one in that recovery position again. So here's what I always tell people. I say, look, get in before the next run, get in before the next bull market, because by doing that, you're positioning yourself in a better position. But you can see in phase one into phase two, it's kind of a slow incline, right? But we're growing. And that might go for 8 years like that. And then we hit that hyper supply phase and start to cycle back down. And this is where the market cycles really work for you. So, I've been asked a lot, can you time the market? And I don't know that you can necessarily time the market. You can just know where you're at in the cycle. So, thanks, Rain. Okay. So glad that you're here this morning. Super stoked about today. Let's just talk about what's happening today a little bit. We're action-packed. Another epic day for sure. Some great speakers today. Plenty of opportunities to dive deeper into your investing strategy. So whether you're a passive investor looking for a sponsor, looking for the next deal, you're going to get a lot of information on that today. If you're an active investor and you are looking to scale your business, you're going to get a ton of information on that today. But this morning, we're really going to focus in a lot on tax planning, right? So I'm going to have Billy Withers on, who's going to talk about some tax strategies and how investing in multifamily will be able to help you help your investor, right? Because really that's what we're doing, is our focus needs to be on the investor return. Then we're going to have Kevin Cawley on, and he's going to give us a great overview of cost segregation and how that works in the tax planning process. And we'll have a panel on raising capital. So then we're going to spend a bunch of time on raising capital. Then I'm going to have Dallin Schultz on from Capitalist Pro. He and I are going to talk about that platform, and we're going to talk about other tools in raising capital. Then this afternoon, we have the mad scientist on, Neil Bawa, who's going to talk about the market conditions. So this whole market cycle conversation will really get encapsulated this afternoon. Neil's phenomenal. And then we're going to end the day with Veena Jetty. And if anybody knows Veena or follows her, she has over $1 billion in assets under management, and really gives some great insight on how to do that, how to grow your business. So again, I'm glad you're here. Make sure you're using your workbook today. Remember, each page is laid out for a speaker. There might be one change in there today that you don't see. Kevin Cawley, Ryan Bakey was supposed to speak this morning, but got called away on an emergency. But his partner, Billy Withers, is going to fill in for him and talk to us about tax planning. So I'm going to jump in, but make sure you're using your workbook today. Again, write down those key takeaways. I'd love to hear about your key takeaways. After you process maybe Saturday and Sunday, shoot me an email on Monday. Love to hear about that. And then, again, I just want to say, listen, take advantage of this coaching program. Get involved, take the next action step. The education is beneficial, right? I think it was Forrest yesterday who talked about going back to school, right? He went back to school and he went to Harvard and spent, well over $150,000 on his education. And here's a guy who's been in the business 25 years and continued to further his education. So how do we do that as investors, right? All right, let me jump in here. As I mentioned, Ryan Bakey had an emergency this morning, got called away, but Billy Withers, thanks, Billy. I appreciate you being here this morning, is going to be filling in. Let me tell you a little bit about Billy. His career has been on helping hundreds of real estate investors and business owners organize their financial systems and reduce their tax liabilities. And that's what we want to hear this morning, right? We want to talk a lot about how do we give tax benefits to our investors? And if you're raising capital today, this is the time of year that investors are starting to think, man, I made a lot of money this year. How am I going to offset this? So, but he helps reduce tax liabilities by leveraging his expertise and flexibility of a virtual firm. He's been able to provide you with comfort and knowledge, knowing how to help you grow that part of your business. You know, he's got processes and services that he's going to talk to you about today, and help you get some information on the tax law that's going to help you convey that to your investors. Help me welcome Billy to the stage this morning. Hey, Billy, good morning.
Good morning. How's my audio?
Oh, you're great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Good to see you.
Excellent. Good to see you too. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm going to give you the stage, and I'm walk away for 40 minutes or so. And when you're done, we can open back up for some Q&A.
Fantastic. Yep. Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks, Billy.
Hi, everyone. So as Mike said, oh no, I can't screen share. Is somebody available to help with that?
Okay, all right, go try it again.
Cool. Good thing we're starting a little early. Perfect. Great. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Yeah, so today I'm talking about tax strategies for real estate multifamily investors. And I wanted to focus my presentation kind of two-part, right? Whether you're investing passively, so people like Mike said who are raising capital and need to convince their investors that all the tax strategies that are synonymous with multifamily investing, or if you are doing deals yourself and you need some tips on how to make sure that your deal is most tax efficient. We're going to hit both of those topics today, and we'll talk a little bit too about real estate professional. And we'll talk a little bit too about opportunity zones, because that's always kind of a buzzword. It's still relevant, for those of you who didn't know. And so I kind of broke this presentation into two sections. So kind of the passive strategies, what do our investors care about? What do our investors want to make sure that we're taking advantage of? And then non-passive strategies, how can we leverage the tax code to really juice our returns for our investors or ourselves? Usually both, right? Okay, great. So first topic here, as I said, passive strategies. So the reason why we talk about passive strategies is because in real estate investing, especially long-term rentals, multifamily housing, commercial properties as well, we have to deal with what the IRS calls the passive loss rules. And the passive loss rules are where any trade or business in which the taxpayer does not materially participate is considered a passive activity. And that passive activity is treated differently than ordinary income, non-passive activity, so to say, earned income, right? My W-2s, my self-employment income, things like that. Those types of income are non-passive. And then passive activities are reserved for business income, so rental real estate, car washes, things like that, but you don't materially participate in those activities. Material participation requires involvement on a regular, continuous, and substantial basis. There's 7 bright line tests that allow us to determine if your involvement in this activity is passive or non-passive. And the two of the most common are 500 hours involved in that activity, or 100 hours in that activity and more than anyone else. However, the IRS and our legislatures understand that investing in rental real estate, where you're usually collecting rent once a month, not typically more than that. If you have a couple of properties, you have to collect a different time. But if each tenant has, pays once a month, that real estate is what's called a per se passive. And that means that you may materially participate in this activity, but this activity is such a relatively light lift that we have to treat these losses as passive if you generate a loss in this activity. Now, of course, if you generate income, you got to pay tax on the income regardless. But we have some strategies that we can leverage passive loss rules to avoid that scenario. And so that's what I want to talk through today. Now, passive loss limitations, as I've described them, they can only be used to offset passive income. So where that's kind of seen as a downside, right? I can't invest in a multifamily property, say a $50,000 investment, and write $50,000 off of my W-2 income. I can't do that because of the passive loss rules. What I can do is invest $50,000 into a syndication, get some passive losses racked up, and either in the future or alongside other passive investments that generate passive income, I can use those two activities to offset one another. So, like I said, carryover, you can use unused passive losses year to year. So you may be making an investment today in your future that would presumably generate passive income that you won't have to pay tax on. And like I said, they offset each other too. So invest in a passive loss vehicle today, like a multifamily house. Go invest in something that'll generate instant returns, such as a ATM route, a vending machine route, something like that. Those two activities will offset each other, and I will, pay no tax collectively on those two activities. Of course, there is an exception to the passive loss rule, which is if I'm a real estate professional, we can turn those passive losses into non-passive losses. But that's very hard to do. And there's a couple other exceptions, but that's the main one we're going to focus in on today. However, like I said, very hard to do. We'll talk about how to get into that, but at the same time, that's not most people. Most people are not going to qualify for that or want to do the level of work involved that'll qualify for that. So, because it is taking on a new business. So some passive loss tips, whether or not you need to know them for yourself or to pitch them to your investors. We got a couple things that we can leverage the passive loss rules to make them, either soften the blow, not such a bad thing, or if you keep the bigger picture in mind of how is this helping me build wealth, we'll talk through. So the first way around the passive loss rules is the mom and pop rule, right? Mom and pop rule is basically if you are actively participating in your rental property, say, for example, you buy a duplex and you rent it out, or you're doing the BRRRR strategy for those who are familiar, right? Buy, rent, or buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. You are going to be able to use up to $25,000 of any losses you generate against your all other streams of income, provided that you have a modified adjusted gross income of less than 100,000. And so obviously it's very hard to do, right? If I'm making 90,000 a year, I might not have enough to generate 25. I might not have enough cash laying around to generate $25,000 of passive losses. But if I'm able to take advantage of that, I can. And then it's a sliding scale. So 100,000 is the base modified adjusted gross income. It slides up to $150,000. So say, for example, if I make 125, I can use 12,500 of the 25,000 in losses available to me in year one. So it still helps. But what we see, especially with, investors, is I make over $150,000 and therefore the mom and pop rule does not apply to me. And furthermore, unfortunately, if you're a limited partner in a passive syndication, you're not going to be able to qualify for the mom and pop rule either, because this is not considered active rental real estate for you. Obviously, you're not doing anything. You just invested $50,000 or more. And so as a result, you can't take advantage of the mom and pop rule. But it's a good one to keep in mind that if I get my modified adjusted gross income down to $100,000, it's going to be available for me to also invest in some long-term rentals that I'm, either self-manage or am involved in the management decisions. I will be able to use that to offset my other streams of non-passive income. Now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, how to get modified adjusted gross income down below 100 in subsequent conversation here. So now, this is always my big pitch for limited partners. Everybody says, I make $150,000 or more. Why would I ever go invest in real estate when I can't use any of the losses to offset my income? And that is a fairly decent question. But if you're looking at it in terms of, I can invest $50,000 into a brokerage account, or I can invest $50,000 into a syndication. What is more tax advantage to do? And the answer is certainly investing in real estate, even with these passive losses rules. And here's an example. So let's say I'm getting a 5% return on dividends in my brokerage account, plus, some opportunity, some control to, sell some stocks at short-term capital gains rates or long-term capital gains rates. All of that income that I generated is taxable income. So, no matter what I do, those dividends are always going to be taxable income to me, unless I have other streams of non-passive losses. And those capital gains, even the long-term capital gains rates are preferential, but again, I'm still taxed on that income when I generate it. And my losses, say if I generate a $3,000, $3,500 loss in the year from my investment, not only is that money gone, right? I've just basically lit $3,500 on fire, but I can only take a $3,000 loss this year, and that $500 subsequent loss is carried forward to future years. So it's not, it's obviously a tool in your wealth building toolbox to have a brokerage account that's invested in dividends and capital gains type investments, but the tax benefits aren't exactly there for you, and you have to actually lose money to generate a taxable loss, which is like I said, selling at a loss. However, if you take that same $50,000 and invest in real estate, now that you guys know the passive loss rules, what happens, right? Generally speaking, that initial investment into the syndication will generate a loss somewhere between $0 and $50,000. That loss you can't deduct it against your W-2. That's true. But depending on how quickly distributions start coming back to you, you won't be taxed until you've used up that bucket of passive losses. So say in the first year, you generated $10,000 loss. Say in the next year, you start getting your money back in the form of monthly or quarterly distributions. You might only recognize a $5,000 income in year 2. And so all the while those distributions have been rolling in and you're not paying tax, and you still have losses to carry over to year 3 in this example. So it's a really powerful tool to say, I can invest this $50,000. I do my homework on the sponsor of the deal, things like that. I'm confident that they'll be able to deliver. They're going to, again, deliver those distributions to you, in most cases tax-free. And so as that $50,000 return of investment comes back to you, you're not going to pay any tax until you've used up all of your passive losses, things like that. And then, as we've discussed, you can continue to invest in other passive loss activities to, once that asset stabilizes or once your distributions become more frequent, turn around and make another investment. And then now your passive losses come together against your passive income, and you're still not paying tax. You made another investment, you're still not paying tax all these years down the line, versus investing in a brokerage account. You are still going to be generating taxable income, things like that. So that's the power of investing in real estate, even as a limited partner, and having to deal with the passive loss rules. Now, one more point on, I guess 2 more points on investing into passive syndication, for example, and still being subject to these passive loss rules, but still taking advantage of them. You can invest across different asset classes, right? So say, for example, you get into a deal that's a multifamily value add project. You invest $50,000 there, like we said. Might take a few quarters to go by before you start getting that return on investment with distributions, things like that. But you'll be able to generate those losses in year 1. And then in subsequent years, you can turn around and invest in different asset classes, whether you invest in something with higher cash flowing, like short-term rentals, or different car washes and other businesses too, as well. So self-storage, other asset class, other businesses such as ATM route, vending machine route, things like that. All of those investments are going to net together, and you'll be able to generate returns that are tax-free. So as long as you keep investing in those vehicles, you'll be able to generate passive losses, and as a result, have kind of a tool in your back pocket that allows you to not pay tax on your investments, which is really great. And that's something that we do here with my company, Summit Advanced Tax Strategy. We help investors do just this, right? They invest in some multifamily properties. They invest in some short-term rentals that generate a lot of cash flow. How do we marry those 2 investments together to make sure that we're not paying any tax? And some people do the reverse, right? Let's invest in a short-term rental, take some losses off my W-2, which is outside of the scope of the conversation today, but a lot of people know about the short-term rental loophole. Now, can I go invest that money into short-term, into multifamily houses, and then become passive, have those 2 offset together, work together to continue to build wealth tax-free? So that is what I have on the passive loss tips. I'll take a little break to answer some questions here. So first question was, can you explain passive loss a little more? How is it calculated? Yeah, so basically, in the most basic example, you are going to have, again, a $50,000 investment into syndication is very common. They'll usually do a cost segregation study or some other method to generate a lot of paper losses. Or if they're doing a heavy value add, they're going to be investing your money into the property, getting a bunch of deductions for doing that, and then pass those back to you. Say that generates a $5,000 loss, something like that. That is going to carry forward if you're not able to deduct any of it until you have passive income. So the property generates rental income, things like that. So it's not exactly a magic calculation. It's just simply, whatever your K1 says, A K1 is the tax form that you get from investing in syndication, of course. Whatever that says kind of determines what your passive losses are from that investment. And then on Form 8582, all of those losses kind of combine, and that's where you figure out what your passive losses are year to year. Cool. And that was the only question so far. Good. So next, so pardon me. Sorry. One of the common deductions that is new for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is, sunsetting here soon, and unless Congress gets off their butts and does something about it. One of the benefits afforded from that tax legislation is something called the qualified business income deduction. So the qualified business income deduction is a tax break for pass-through entities, right? So, in the context of this conversation, that's most commonly partnerships, but as corporations also qualify, self-employed businesses also qualify. Any real estate that you own personally is going to generally qualify. You get a 20% deduction on qualified business income. So qualified business income is pretty much any stream of income that is not a specified service trader business, which is, doctors, lawyers, attorneys, consultants, or, extremely hands-off, something like a triple net lease. As I put down here, triple net leases are disqualified from the QBI deduction. But anything that kind of takes, some level of active participation, it's going to qualify for this 20% deduction, and is also subject to other income and thresholds and phase outs. But let's say you make an investment into a syndication and it generates a $50,000 income for the year. You're going to be able to take a $10,000 deduction as long as it's not one of those exceptions. So that's obviously really powerful, and you'll want to make sure that that deduction is on your tax return, assuming that you qualify. But that's another, again, benefit afforded to passive investors that's not afforded to somebody who just invests through their brokerage account into stocks and dividends and things like that. So you'll want to make sure that you have, the sufficient information. All the information to take advantage of this deduction comes from your K1. And then one of the drawbacks too is that you have to use up all of your qualified business losses first. So what does that mean? Let's say, again, I invest $50,000 into a syndication. I generate a $10,000 loss in year one. My QBI, my qualified business losses are $10,000. So now I have to generate $10,000 of income before I can take advantage of the qualified business income deduction. Now, of course, that's not a terrible thing, right? Year one, $10,000 loss. Year two, $11,000 of income. I'm not paying tax on that first $10,000 because, as we've covered at length, passive loss rules apply, and you would, not pay tax on that income. And so that extra $1,000 over and above my $10,000 of qualified business losses, I will get a $200 deduction for that. So really, I'm paying $800 of taxable income on $11,000 of income in year two. That's pretty great. Pardon me. I live in Colorado and it's really dry, in case you guys didn't know. Okay, so the next kind of buzzword I wanted to cover is qualified opportunity zones. And again, this is somewhat of a specialized topic, but when I get asked to present to multifamily operators and investors, it's a very common buzzword, and it's been around a few years, so I feel like it's been covered, but I always still get the question, hey, I found this great property, it's in an opportunity zone, what can I do? So I wanted to talk a little bit about this today because it is, I think, relevant. So a qualified opportunity zone is an economically distressed community where new investments may be eligible for preferential tax treatments. Localities qualify as qualified opportunity zones when they are nominated for that designation by a state or the District of Columbia or U.S. territory, and that nomination was certified by the Secretary of the Treasury. So that's from the IRS. That's really just a fancy way of saying if the government deems an area that needs a little bit of TLC, needs a little bit of investment to come in from outside sources to spruce it up or make it, just improve it, generally speaking, where they want to guide, investment dollars, that area can be designated as a qualified opportunity zone. So what are the benefits for investors? First off, an investor can defer any tax on a prior eligible gain, provided that you meet the 180-day timeline. And then that deferral lasts until the earlier of the date in which you sell or exchange your interest, or December 31st of 2026. So put in layman's terms here, if I want to take advantage of a qualified opportunity zone fund and I don't want to lift a finger, if I can find somebody who is investing on my behalf in a qualified opportunity zone, I can sell some stock out of my brokerage account, for example. All right, maybe I'll have $50,000 in gains. So say, sell stocks at basis of 50, sell them for $100,000 of proceeds. I'll have a $50,000 gain. I'll have 180 days to defer that money into my qualified opportunity zone investment, which is really great because you can take a look at what you've done year to date. So everything since April, basically, call it May. Excuse me, I'm struggling. So I can take any, capital gains that I've realized since May, turn around and invest them into a qualified opportunity zone by November. And I will basically not pay tax on that event until April 15th of 2027. That's when my December 31st, 2026 tax year return is due. So again, we're coming up on that timeline. So it's really only, a year and a half of deferral, or maybe a little less if you haven't taken advantage of this yet. But who likes to pay tax? So, if it's property, if it's, investments that you were going to sell anyway, or, say you had a big liquidating event and you're interested in qualified opportunity zones, you can still take advantage of it. And that is just the first benefit of being invested in a qualified opportunity zone. The second benefit is if you invest that money into a qualified opportunity zone or fund for at least 10 years, you're eligible for an adjustment in the basis of the investment at its fair market value on the date that it is sold or exchanged. So the math is a little bit complicated and a little bit, hazy, but here's how it works in a nutshell, which is if I, again, I have this $50,000 gain in my previous example, I'm not paying tax on it until just April 15th, 2027. And then if I hold it for 10 years, if I hold that investment for 10 years, as it appreciates, a lot of that appreciation will become, I'll get a step up in basis, basically, meaning that investment will count as if I paid tax, and then I actually did not pay tax. So I could turn around, say I make an investment today, and we exit and say December of 2035, I will be able to defer more gain. I'm sorry, completely get out of that gain on some of that appreciation if I can hold for that timeline. And obviously, in syndicating in this environment, usually the hold periods are not 10 years. But at the same time, if you think about the mechanics of what a qualified opportunity zone might look like, you have to, other people have to come in and invest as well for that appreciation to be forced usually. And so as a result, if you can hold 10 years, obviously there's a big benefit of doing so. And as other people come in and improve the property, you're going to get hopefully a really good appreciation boost as well. So you're kind of here to recap in a nutshell. So whatever your appreciated capital gains are, if you want to take advantage of a qualified opportunity zone, whether you've sold, in the last 6 months and you want to invest today, or if you are, thinking about selling before year end, maybe any kind of gain, short-term or long-term, is pretty broad, is going to qualify. So say, for example, I could sell, some RSUs in my company at a gain. I could sell some stock I've been holding on to for a long while at a gain. Short-term or long-term, those are going to qualify to take advantage of this strategy, which, one more point to harp on too, you should really focus on short-term, right? Because short-term, even though it's not, it only you're subject to income tax on short-term gains, it is at your ordinary income tax rate. So if you're in the 30, 40%, 30 or 35% tax brackets, short-term capital gains aren't very preferential, whereas long-term capital gains, those are capped at 20%, plus net investment income tax. So it's more beneficial to invest short-term capital gains into qualified opportunity zones, but not everybody can do that. And then you have 180 days to reinvest. So if I sold today, I'd have until, April 18th, 2025 to invest. I can still report that on my 2024 tax return, right? So if I sell stock today, I get that deferral even if I don't invest until March, say, of next year. So that's a really great benefit too, is I can, hold on to that cash, make sure I'm making a really good investment, and I won't pay tax even if I invest 6 months from now. Now the kicker is you got to be sure to report this annually until the tax is paid, or if you sell your interest. So you got to be working with somebody who really understands these things and understand the intricacies of reporting that, because you have to report every year that you still hold that interest. Obviously, the IRS wants to know that you didn't just skip out on capital gains and then forget about it later. And the guidance on that was kind of, slow to come, in my opinion. So there may be people out there who aren't going to pick up any kind of gain in 2026, but kind of is what it is. So now, if you have questions on, how to take advantage of that for yourself rather than investing passively, save those for the end. I kind of axed that part of this discussion, but we can certainly have that as we approach the end here. So next, we're going to cover those non-passive strategies, right? So like I was talking about, first half of the conversation was really for, the limited partner. Obviously, it's good to know for people who are sponsors of deals, things like that. But it more so want to talk going forward about how to take advantage of real estate tax benefits while being actively involved in investing in real estate. So I'm going to take one more sip of coffee too. Oh, I was not on mute. Okay. So becoming a real estate professional. Everybody wants to do it, but it's very hard to do. And the reason why everybody wants to do it is, like I said, you're subject to these passive loss limitations we've been talking about if you are not a real estate professional, and becoming a real estate professional is how to get around it. But it's very difficult to do because more than half of your personal services must be performed in a real property trade or business, among which are real estate rental management and leasing, property development, redevelopment, and buying and selling, right? So brokers and realtors. But more than half your time has to be spent in that real property trade or business. And it has to be at least 750 hours. So if you're somebody who's semi-retired, and you might only spend 500 hours doing real estate and 400 hours doing something else, you still can't qualify as a real estate professional. One of the most common things I hear from clients and prospective clients is, I do real estate all the time. How am I not a real estate professional? And it's because there's a very set of stringent rules where you can't just take advantage of, skirt around, I should say, the passive loss rules, or take advantage of investing in real estate from a tax perspective without meeting the criteria that consider you truly to be a real estate professional. But like I said, if you can spend more than half your time in a real property trade or business and at least 750 hours, the benefits are pretty great because you can deduct passive losses against other income. We'll walk through several examples of people who can do that successfully. You avoid those pesky passive activity limitations. So, you can have an modified AGI of over $150,000 and not have to worry about, the passive loss rules. And then you potentially qualify for other tax deductions. So, there's a lot of intricacies around investing in real estate that you can take advantage of that are not available to the, person who's not a real estate professional. So, who are some successful real estate professionals? So hopefully this is a pretty broad base that applies to some of the people here you can take away from this. So obviously somebody who truly does real estate full time. So they are a developer for 2,000 hours a year. They are so whether that's fix and flips or ground up construction. You are a realtor and all you do is sell houses 2,000 hours a year. And I say 2,000 because 40 hours a week times 52 weeks is, 2,080 or whatever. You are somebody who just manages your real estate portfolios, right? So if you are, you have 5 rental properties and they each take you about 400 hours a year, you're full-time in real estate. They obviously only need to take you 200 hours a year each, right? But that's 750 hour threshold. But if you do that full time, you are involved in a real property trade or business. And as long as that's more than half of your time spent elsewhere giving personal services, you would be considered a real estate professional. So what would that look like? So if I'm a realtor, I make $200,000 a year. All I do is sell homes, but I materially participate in the management of my rental properties. I will be able to buy a rental property, to take a bunch of deductions for it, whether through value add or a cost segregation study, or hopefully both. If I can generate $100,000 of losses from real estate, I'd be able to cut my income in half, right? 200,000 from realtor, 100,000 in real estate investing. Those two would come together, and my tax bill would be, whatever it is at $100,000 of net income. Now, who else may be more relevant to the people in this presentation are, what if you're a highly compensated employee and you have a spouse that does not deliver any other personal services? For example, they stay at home, or maybe they just do some teaching on the side, something like that. If the spouse that, does not have a significant amount of personal services elsewhere wants to spend their time pursuing the real estate professional status, if they can meet the 750 hours a year threshold, so maybe say they manage a couple of rental properties for 750 hours a year, and they are materially involved in the management of those activities, obviously they would be to get the hours, they're going to qualify. And then, so now say if you can generate, again, $100,000 of losses from real estate, but I make $200,000 a year in my tech job, my attorney job, my doctor job, I'm going to be able to marry those together and offset, again, $100,000 of taxable income. So that's where we see a lot of benefit from the real estate professional strategy is, one spouse is all in on real estate, the other spouse makes the money, and they work together on their real estate portfolio. And one thing too about the real estate professional status is, if one of you is a real estate professional, both of you can still materially participate in the rental property. So say, for example, let's say I'm a doctor, I work at the hospital, I have some rental properties next to the hospital, and my spouse manages, rental properties away from the hospital. I could still be one collecting rent, checking in on the property, things like that by the hospital while I go to work. Those hours will count as material participation, even though I can't be the real estate professional, but my wife, my wife and I don't have to drive to work together to go check out that rental property. That's just silly in the first place. But also the rules are written in such a way where when you're married, both of your material participation hours count for purposes of the second test, which is, do you materially participate in your rentals? So that's great. Obviously, somebody who actually does real estate full time, example 3 here, they're actually a realtor. They are actually they do property development. One of my favorite examples is somebody who was a multifamily sponsor. I had a client who was a multifamily sponsor. All he did was buy and sell multifamily deals and do value add. His wife was a well-paid nurse practitioner. And so, all of his real estate losses that he was able to generate, was able to offset her income, and they did not pay tax for many years, because it's a very powerful strategy to have somebody actually doing real estate full-time, actual real estate business, I should say, not just managing a small portfolio. And as a result, they generated a lot of income and paid very little to no tax. I put realtor in the example, but somebody who does, short-term rentals, obviously there's a lot more work involved in a short-term rental than a long-term rental. That works for my clients as well. And then, so there's several professions that are limited by hours as to how much you can work. The two that come to mind are pilots, who are limited to 1,000 hours a year, as to how many hours they can work. And then also, I know, many doctors and nurses are just kind of schedule limited, not that they can't work, close to 2,000 hours, but the facts of the reality are they only work 3 days a week. So if you can spend, or a week on and a week off, if you can spend your off weeks with more time in real estate than, or your off days in real estate than you're actually working at your W-2 job, you might be able to get away with real estate professional for yourself. Now, of course, very hard to do, right? You got to be sure that, if you're limited to 1,000 hours as a pilot, you are spending 1,001 for sure in real estate, and then all of your time qualifies. So it's still very difficult to do, but we have helped people do that successfully, and it's worth taking a look at if you are in one of those professions where you only work a handful of days a week by design, or any example like that. And then obviously, my favorite example, one of my favorite clients, even though he had a prickly personality, is the person who is part-time self-employed, and they spend the rest of their time in real estate, but really it's just traveling the world, which is kind of the dream. So part-time self-employed, an example of this might be, I run a landscaping business or some other kind of business somewhat passively, but I'm, still involved, obviously, for material participation rules. And I maybe do that 500 hours a year. Now, as long as I can spend 750 hours managing my duplexes, triplexes, and my other assets in my portfolio, as long as I spend, again, more than half my time materially participating in my rental real estate portfolio, I can be a real estate professional. So I'd have that, self-employment income to, look good, be bankable, things like that, have some diversification away from real estate because diversification is important, but I spend most of my time investing in real estate, and I have a side business, consulting, landscaping, whatever it is, and I'm able to be a real estate professional myself because I am able to, spend more than half my time. So who's unsuccessful quickly here? Because I know I'm pushing 40 minutes. Full-time non-real estate professional. So as I said, if you spend 2,000 hours in, consulting for accounting firms or something, you are not going to be considered a real estate professional. No way, no how. And the reason is, the only reason I could find is that the government can't fathom anybody working more than 2,000 hours. So apologies to any government employees that I've offended here, but I've told that joke to many government employees and they all laugh. So I assume it's true. And then full-time real estate, but passive in my rentals. So again, those clients who come to me and say, I do real estate full-time all the time. There's no way I'm not a real estate professional. Well, if you, and actually I had a client like this just recently, if you have if you're a realtor in Chicago and you have a duplex in Florida with a management company on it, you don't materially participate in your rentals. The management company does all of it. And as a result, even though you're real estate, you're not a professional, you're not taking advantage of the real estate professional tax loophole because your rentals are passive. So you have to have that material participation. You have to have that self-management of the rental to some degree to be able to say that you are non-passive or materially participating in your passive rentals and therefore utilizing the real estate professional tax loophole. And then, of course, I've also had somebody recently come to me and say, well, I buy and sell houses full time, which is, great, but you also have to be a 5% owner in that company. So if you're considered an employee of a company, and even though you do real estate full time, you have to have 5% owner. You have to have that threshold of control in the company to be able to take advantage of the real estate professional losses. And it kind of makes sense, right? If you're a W-2 employee, even for a real estate trader business type company, you don't have the control over your job to say, okay, we're gonna, I'm gonna hold on to this property that I'm, generating income for the company for, things like that. You have to have a level of control in your real property trader business in order to take advantage of the real estate professional status. Okay, so the de minimis safe harbor. This one is not as commonly known as it should be. And again, for the limited investors, you should know this and make sure that your sponsors of your deal are taking advantage of this. But this is more for the sponsors of deals, people who are buying and selling, certainly doing value add improvements to properties. And it's also, even though it's in a tax strategy presentation, it's actually more of an administrative loophole to be aware of, as opposed to a tax strategy that you can utilize. So what is the de minimis safe harbor? It allows for immediate expensing of low-cost assets. So think your fridge, $600 a pop, maybe now with inflation, $800 a pop, cabinets, a small amount of flooring or repairs to flooring and cabinets, things like that. You don't need to capitalize and depreciate them over 5, 7, 27 and a half years. You can immediately expense those low-cost assets and improvements, provided that you make this de minimis safe harbor election on your tax return. And when I say low cost, what I mean is $2,500 or less. So the reason why we have the de minimis safe harbor is because, back in the day, before the tangible property regulations, so circa 2013, 2012, and prior, people would, go to their accountant, they say, I bought a new fridge for my rental. The accountant would take the $600 fridge and depreciate it over 27 and a half years, which is just crazy, right? There's no way a fridge lasts 27 and a half years. And the return on that is, 600 divided by 27 and a half. That's a very long time for you to recoup your investment in your rental property for something that's, fairly minuscule, and for something that's not even going to last 27 and a half years. The tangible property regulations came out and said, okay, not only are all these asset classes now really well defined, asset classes meaning, fridges are 5-year property, flooring is 5-year property, things like that. But if you buy something for less than $500, you don't have to depreciate it over 27.5 years. That's just silly. And then subsequently after that, 2014 year, 2015 and beyond, that de minimis safe harbor jumped up to $2,500 because $500 is very small and not very applicable. So you have to make a selection on your tax return, like I said, that I'm going to expense everything under $2,500. And then you also have to be sure that your books and records are utilizing this as well. So it's not, like I said, it's not a strategy where we can say, okay, you put $10,000 of assets on the balance sheet. So we're just going to reclassify those and, deduct them as de minimis safe harbor expenses because they were all less than $2,500 each. It is something that you have to actively work with your bookkeeper on to take advantage of. But also you have to be sure that, again, if you're a limited partner, that they're aware of the de minimis safe harbor, that their books are set up to take advantage of this. And that way, is especially buying a multifamily property. Here's the most basic example. You buy a rental property, there's some tenants in there, you go fix up some units. And as long as that property is in service, you can take advantage of the de minimis safe harbor. So, you have to go buy appliances less than $2,500 each. We're going to immediately expense those because the property's in service, things like that. As long as they're taking advantage of the de minimis safe harbor, I feel like I've covered what I needed to cover on this. So yeah, like I said, that fridge is a common example. You buy 10 fridges at $600 each. That's a $6,000 invoice, but you can take advantage of the de minimis safe harbor because each item is less than $2,500. An example of something that's you're not supposed to do is, let's say it's, $2,000 to buy some roofing material and then $2,000 to install it. That's technically a $4,000 repair. And you should look at those as one transaction, even though it's two separate transactions, less than $2,500. So there's some, again, this is more of an administrative thing rather than saying I'm just going to expense everything under $2,500. But that is kind of the threshold of, if it's $2,500 expense, we're just going to write it off. I'm not going to look at it. And you'll have this safe harbor where the IRS says, yes, we may not see these as, deductible expenses, but, you have to capitalize and depreciate them, but you won't get penalized for doing so because you had this safe harbor on your books and on your tax return that kind of insulates you from significant damage. So, and then the last one that, again, if you're a passive investor, you need to be aware, you may make sure your sponsor is aware of, or if you're a sponsor in a deal, you need to be aware of on value add is partial asset disposition. And this has become a lot more common in recent years, which I'm very glad to see. But a couple years ago, 2018, 2019, 2020, nobody was taking advantage of this. And the logic is so simple, it'll blow your mind that this isn't more commonly known. So what partial asset disposition is in a nutshell is if you have a roof on your property, of course it does, and you need to, the property's been, in service, being depreciated, tenants have been living there, and you need to replace that roof. What usually happens without partial asset disposition is you'll be depreciating your roof from the purchase of the property, and then you'll go buy a new roof and you'll start depreciating that, usually over 27.5, if not 39 years. But you have two roofs on your depreciation schedule, but you only have one roof on the property. And of course, that does not make any sense. So what a partial asset disposition does, and it says, okay, let's value the cost of that original roof on the building. We will take a deduction for throwing it away, because when we replace the roof, we throw it away. And then we'll just be depreciating the new roof, come in and depreciate that over 27.5 for 39 years. And of course, that makes sense to do because it's structural. It's supposed to last a long time. But that initial roof, we shouldn't be depreciating more. You can take advantage of getting a deduction for it by throwing it away. Now, how do we value what the value of the old roof is? We use the producer price index or a cost segregation study. So a cost segregation study, I can't remember if the presentations happen on that or if it's coming, but a cost segregation goes in and values all the different components in a property, one of which being more likely than not is the roof. And if the cost segregation study says the roof is worth $10,000, and you of course have an invoice showing a new roof is $12,000, you'll depreciate the new roof over 27.5 years or 39 years at that $12,000 figure. But whatever your adjusted basis in the old roof is, so $10,000 less any depreciation claimed on that roof, you're going to get a deduction for that. So even though you can't have significant depreciation on that new roof because it's structural, you can still take a very large write-off for any remaining basis in the old roof. So again, you'll want to make sure that you are taking advantage of this with your accountant as you go to file your tax return if you are a sponsor of a deal, or if you are, investing in a deal and its value add, you want to make sure that they are aware of partial asset disposition, taking, full advantage of it. Hopefully, if they're using a cost segregation study, the cost seg experts know how to take advantage of this, but not all of them do. Again, it's become a lot more prevalent, and a lot more of them have been able to take advantage of it, but they don't automatically help you with it if you don't ask. So you need to be aware of that. And that is all I had. So I believe we can open the floor for questions.
Hey, Billy, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you stepping in and filling in here today. Anybody in the audience have questions? Let's put them in the chat. Anything around tax planning or real estate professional or strategies, any ideas or thoughts that you have, love to chat through some of those. Hey, Billy, I have a question on
Sure.
On the bonus depreciation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you went into that at all, but can you explain how bonus depreciation works? And what's your perspective on whether or not it's going to come back or if it's going to expire?
Yeah, great. Two great questions. So I didn't cover bonus depreciation, mostly because it's phasing out. So, but well, let's start at the beginning. So as I said, if you have a roof that's a structural improvement, has depreciated over 27.5 years, that's the best you can do. It doesn't qualify for bonus depreciation. Now there's 179 and things like that and blah, 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 but outside of the scope of this conversation. Bonus depreciation is extra depreciation that you can take on assets that are considered to be personal property. So not structural in nature, things that aren't glued down, nailed down, things like that. Wait, I'm sorry. Things that are not just non-structural in nature. So if it's, for example, a cabinet, which is nailed down, those are going to be depreciated over 5 years. But because they're personal property, you can take bonus depreciation. And currently, bonus depreciation is 60% of the investment. So, a $5,000 set of cabinets, you can take $3,000 in the first year as bonus depreciation. And then that $2,000 delta is going to be depreciated over 5 years. So your ultimate depreciation expenses are roughly $3,500 in your first year. That is phasing out unless Congress acts to bring it back in. It did have passed the House of Representatives, but not the Senate, I believe, most recently. So they're aware that our legislators are aware that people want it brought back and things like that. I believe they were probably waiting for this next presidential election to take up that legislation, because I do think that it's going to have whoever wins the presidential election will heavily influence whether or not depreciation comes back, bonus depreciation comes back, because it was a Trump Tax Cut and Jobs Act change to our legislation. And I believe several Democrats have, vowed to let those Tax Cuts and Jobs Acts expire, which I don't think, in my personal opinion, politics aside, would be anything short of catastrophic with the inflation environment we're in. So that's a little dramatic, but there were a lot of good things about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, whether or not you like Trump or not. So I hope that covers it. But basically, to answer your question, bonus depreciation is eligible on personal property, gives you extra deductions in the first year, but the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was designed to phase it out. And so it'll come back to 100%, or maybe they'll reset it at 50%, which is what it was before, which is, I think, probably the middle of the road answer, right? Because next year it goes down to 40%, I think they won't let that happen. They'll either fix it at 50% or hopefully boost it back up to 100%, because that's what, it was 50% before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
So that originally started at 100% bonus depreciation.
Correct, in
and
2018.
Scaled down 80, this year it's 60, next year it'll be 40%.
Right.
And then does it go to 20 or just go away after 40%?
20% in 2026, and then it fades away to 0 if they don't change the rules.
Right. And I know that legislation has been in front of the House now for several months, where if they do reinstate it, part of that is it'll be retroactive, meaning that you'd get 100% again for 2024. So hopefully that will get passed. It doesn't sound like your opinion is, though, that it's going to get reinstated. So
I would say it depends heavily on the outcome of the election. So I think we'll know, in about a month, which way the winds are blowing.
yeah. So Jennifer's asking a question. She says, just to be clear, that she understands correctly, if I get paid 10 months a year, but only work 8 months per year, I still cannot qualify as a real estate pro if I spend the rest of my time and at least 750 hours doing active real estate work.
Yeah, so I would say that's not entirely fair, but probably still correct. So, that 8 months out of the year um, is what's going to count. So you log your time and say, "Oh, in that 8 months, I spent, 1,000 hours, 1,200 hours, whatever it is." That's going to determine how long I need to spend in real estate. So if it's, 1,200 hours over those 8 months, then I have to spend 1,201 in real estate. And that should be achievable, I would assume. But in its simplest terms, if you spend 8 months working and 4 months in real estate on a cumulative basis, you're probably not a real estate professional. But if it's a situation where, highly seasonal and you hit real estate hard in the off months and then still are involved during those 8 months, I would say it is possible to be a real estate professional. I would say the only scenario where you're not going to be a real estate professional, 12 months out of the year with 2 weeks of vacation, 2,000 hours a year doing, something that's not a real property trader business. That several cases have been decided that you can't spend more than 2,000 hours doing anything. So while I would say that, if those 8 months is say 1,200 hours, whatever it works out to, it'd be risky, but I'd probably still take that chance just because the nature of your job is not that standard 9 to 5, things like that.
So does Congress have anything on the books or in place that they're looking at changing that ruling at all? Or is that pretty much, because, I remember years ago, when did they actually implement that real estate professional?
So I believe the passive loss rules came in '86, and then real estate professional came in a little bit later. So maybe it was like early '90s, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And so to answer your question, I don't believe that will ever change. Like I said, it comes down to that common control, right? If I am involved in real property, what happens if I'm a flipper developer, I do BRRRR, or I'm a property manager, something like that. I come across people who want to buy and sell rental properties, and so I may make a business decision and go, I have $50,000 hanging around here. I think this is a good deal. I'm going to rent it out. I know what I'm doing, so I'm going to buy this property that came across my desk in my other real property venture, and it is part of my business in that I can make those business decisions. Whereas if I just buy and sell new builds and I'm a W-2 employee, I may have that control outside of my job, but it doesn't really have anything to do with my job day to day that says, I'm a real estate professional. So I think it's more of a, semantics thing than a, tax loophole, so to say.
So here's a question. If I'm a syndicator,
Mhm.
right, and I have a passive investor in my syndication that is not a real estate professional, is there a point in time that they can ever use that depreciation?
I can't believe I forgot to talk about that. So in the real estate professional, what you can do as a real estate, once you hit that real estate professional status, let's say in your portfolio is a couple long-term rentals that you materially participate in and a couple of rentals that you don't, they're out of state, or they're just super hands-off. You don't even meet that 100-hour threshold. What you can do is group all of those properties and activities together and treat them as one real estate activity. And that includes your investments in a passive syndication. So anything it's what's called an all or nothing election. So either all of your group properties are grouped together, or none of them are grouped together for purposes of the real estate professional rules. So any kind of rental real estate income will be grouped with all of your other rentals. And so somebody like that who is, invested with a passive syndication, but they have other deals going on the side, and they're real estate professionals, they can use those losses even though they're passive. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, it answers one side of it, but the
Okay.
other side is, let's just take the limited partner, right?
Mhm.
The limited investor, the equity investor in a deal who works
Mhm.
a full-time job.
Yeah.
Is there ever a point in time that they can use that depreciation to offset the passive income?
Yeah. That's we spent a little bit of time on that where we're talking about where, yes, if I invest $50,000 into a syndication, maybe I generate a $10,000-$20,000 passive loss, usually from depreciation. If I have other passive streams of income, whether it's other multifamily properties or other passive businesses, ATM route, um, vending machine routes, things like that, car wash, all of those passive activities net together on Form 8582 of your tax return, which is great to know because you can look at your tax return and say, hey, how big of a pile of passive losses do I have to carry forward, and what investments do I want to make to take advantage of this tax-free income? But yes, basically, if you invest in a passive syndication, you generate losses that you maybe can't use in that year against your passive your non-passive W-2 income. But if you have other investments, or once the property starts to generate taxable income for you, you're not going to pay tax until after that threshold is crossed of whatever your passive losses are, your baseline there. So
Yeah, interesting. So one other question, I get asked a lot, how do you vet a sponsor? So passive investors, their big question is, how do you vet a sponsor? So I want to throw that at you. How do you vet a CPA or a good, how do you find a good real estate accountant?
yeah, very good question. So first of all, what we do on the tax planning side of our engagements is we start and make sure that, first of all, we review all of your prior tax returns and let you know if there's any missed opportunities. And then from there, we say, okay, how do we help you achieve your wealth building goals through tax efficiency? So it usually encompasses more than real estate, but real estate is obviously a very big component because of all the reasons we talked through today. And so I think when vetting a CPA, finding somebody who you can work with to help you with not only your tax returns, but more importantly, tax planning, you want to make sure that they are able to, address those items that we talked about today, de minimis safe harbor, of whether or not I'm a real estate professional or how I can get there, things like that. And then also, again, if they take a look at your tax returns and go, hey, you can take advantage of XYZ, we could do it a little bit differently. You should feel confident in knowing that they're going to be able to help you maybe more than the next guy. I had somebody who, I think they just go to a real estate, or I'm sorry, a generalist accountant. Not only did the accountant not know, the ins and outs of the real estate professional rules, but they also did not know that, certain localities have different certain tax treatments, things like that. So I would say the second leg of the stool is not only do they have to know your lingo and help you be able to understand what opportunities you've been missing in the past, but also if they're helping other investors do what you do. So in my example, I have other clients that also invest in this area, and I know those tax loopholes as well because I have other investors who do real estate in that area. And whereas this, person was entirely in Texas, they don't know anything about these, investments in Tennessee, for example. So I would say those two things are most important. Can they help you optimize from where you are and take you to the next level? And then make sure they know that lingo to help you do that. And then also, are they helping people like you, and helping you, try and do what you're doing from a tax efficiency standpoint.
Awesome. Well, Billy, thanks for being here. Very thorough, that's for sure. Appreciate your insights and knowledge. And obviously, people can get a hold of you if they have questions at your email here on the screen.
Yeah, definitely check out our website and see if we can help you out. Email is great. Usually my business partner handles those. And then if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm most active there at Billy Withers Tax. So linkedin.com/in/Billy Withers Tax. I usually push out content there to help you guys understand some of the things we talked about today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate
Of course.
it. You have a great day.
You too.
And we'll look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you. Good luck with the rest of the summit.
Yeah, you bet. You can hang around if you want. So
Appreciate it.
Yep, you bet. Hey, Rain, looks like Kevin's in the house.
I think he's still preparing. Let me go. He is now in the panelist, so he'll be in about 3 seconds.
Okay, perfect.
There you go.
All right, great. So our next speaker, and I'm going to introduce Kevin Cawley. Kevin is the National Account Representative for CSSI. CSSI is a Cost Segregation Services, LLC. Kevin has been the national account representative for CSSI since 2015. Previously, he spent 11 years in the construction management industry, advising builders on how to safely and properly construct all types of commercial property. During this time, Kevin learned how important cash flow was to every business owner he encountered. He also learned that relationships are key in business, and if you can develop a good rapport with your team and clientele, then the work can flourish on future projects. This vast experience was a perfect fit when he came to CSSI. It parallels perfectly with building owners. Working through details of cost segregation with clients not only requires specialized knowledge, but also requires great attention to detail and strong communication skills, which I know Kevin has great communication skills. In fact, some of Kevin's clients from his past career are still some of his clients with CSSI. Kevin currently resides in Downers Grove, Illinois, with his wife, Lauren, and 2 daughters. In his spare time, he enjoys taking boat rides with family, fishing, golfing. Kevin also plays the guitar and piano and still meets with his brother weekly to jam. So Kevin, hey, welcome to the stage. I learned more about you just now than I knew,
Right.
and we've known each other a couple of years now. So
Yep.
good to see you this morning, though. I'm gonna just turn the stage over to you for
Sure.
the next 40 minutes or so, and I'll come back and we'll do some Q&A.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say I don't think Bill's on anymore, but he did a great job. Bill Withers there, the last speaker.
Yeah.
I'm going to definitely reach out to him after this. I was impressed, to say the least. So kudos to Bill if you're on. If not, I'll reach out to you. So, can you hear me well, Mike?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to share the screen for those of you who are going to be on here. I keep it short and sweet. What I'm going to do is show everyone here, and you probably know this already, what happens when you buy an investment property. Automatically, you go on straight line depreciation. So there may be a couple people on here who don't understand that. So we're going to go over that first, super simple. Then I'm going to show you an example of, hey, here's a guy who was doing straight line. We offered this allocation of 5, 7, 15-year assets through cost segregation. Here's his depreciation now. So it's going to be short and sweet, but there'll be a lot of time for Q&A. So I'm going to hit my share screen. Okay, bear with me. And let's make sure we can see. This is an actual client. Does everyone, can you see the screen, Mike? It just says CSSI. It's like an example.
Yes, we do.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. So like I was saying, I had a client who bought a property in May of 2022 for 1.755. If he didn't know me, automatically what would happen here, and I'll blow this up, is his accountant is going to take the purchase price, 1,755,250. Land does not depreciate. So this is the purchase price net of land. Purchase price is probably 20% higher than that. But what the accountant's going to do is he takes the purchase price, residential assets, and I know we're focusing on residential assets, depreciate over 27 and a half years. You can see here. Commercial assets depreciate over 39 years. So anytime someone buys an investment property, their accountant goes, hey, you need a depreciation schedule. The IRS goes, hey, you need a depreciation schedule. Well, what do? They're going to take the purchase price divided by the asset class. So in this case, 1,755 divided by 27 and a half. What we like to show here is my client's depreciation from year 1 to year 27 and a half. Every year, you can see it's going to be the same number over and over and over. What does that mean? Depreciation offsets taxable income. So every year, just for owning this investment property, whether he does cost seg or not, he's going to be able to reduce his taxable income by $63,821. Okay. Why cost seg exists? It came out in 1997. There was a huge lawsuit with the Hospital Corporation of America versus the IRS, or the IRS versus the Hospital Corporation of America, because every 5 years they were replacing carpeting in the hospitals. Every 15 years they were repaving their parking lots. Every 7 years they're replacing ceiling tiles, acoustical ceiling tiles, etc. The IRS said you can't do that. Well, they brought receipts to kind of show, hey, this is what we've been doing each and every year. And so the IRS said, we got to come out with some protocols and processes so that the common investor could do this. So those protocols and processes we still use today. And all it is basically segregating assets. We take a building apart on paper, put it that way, right? So instead of just taking all the parts, pieces, components that make the building what it is, dividing it by 27.5, we tell our clients, wait a minute. We're going to assume 20.3% in this example. So every building's different too. We actually do look at these. It's not just a paper-based thing or we actually check out the properties, but 20.3% of this asset, we said could fit in this 5-year category, right? And then we said there'd be no 7-year property. Okay, 7-year property is usually FF&E, furniture, fixtures, equipment. And we're saying 0.4% of this client's assets could fit in 15-year property, right? So if we take these allocations, again, this is an estimate. My client Joe became a client, but we said instead of the 63,821 over and over and over, if we do those allocations, his depreciation now, let me get rid of this, sorry. Now, instead of being the 63,000 would be 355,078 and 78 bucks, which would be, if you do the math, 663 or 60K goes into 355. How many times? 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Call it 5 years, almost 6 years of straight line depreciation. We're going to roll into a ball and give it to him today. My client was also in the highest federal tax bracket, 37%. So this is a federal service. I get asked quite often, does it do anything with the state taxes? Yes, because we're reducing my client's income by 355. So when you reduce income, taxable income, it's going to reduce the state tax too, but it's a heavy federal service. So we do the depreciation expense. It's calculated just like a write-off, 355K times 37%. And what that did was help my client reduce his income tax liability by $131,000. And for this study, we charged $6,500. I'm going to pause there. Just to take everyone's temperature, so to speak. There's some other things I want to say, but I think it's a good spot to take a break, or at least ask if they have questions, because, Mike, I've done this with you before. It's pretty straightforward stuff that I dive into as far as the example goes. But then, as you know, there's a lot more deeper questions where we could get into the weeds. So I'll stop there and let's see if we got any questions. It froze. Everyone's on mute. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I think some people are a little bit shy in asking
Oh, that's
questions.
okay. Oh, no, that's more than fine. Honest to God, I'm just like, no joke in my head. I said, oh, crap. Like my internet cut out or something. So Mike was adamant to make sure all my stuff works. I was here a half hour early, running around. Let's see on what size property should you recommend doing it? So my firm will work on any properties, investment properties, any asset class, single family, self-storage, multifamily, apartments, hotels, retail, restaurants, etc., with a minimum basis of $150,000. That is very unique. Most firms have $1 million benchmark. So our firm will go that low. Of course, kind of the bigger, the better. Really what matters with cost seg is I do a lot in the self-storage space, but think of it. It's just a big warehouse full of mini warehouses. So multifamily gets a much larger benefit because there's more guts, right? So the more parts and pieces there are to look at and see if they qualify for accelerated depreciation, the better. The lower the benefit. But yeah, our minimum is 150,000 in basis, which means you could buy a house for 75K, and if you put 75K in improvements, you would qualify for us to at least run an analysis. No problem. And Rain, thanks for jumping in there. I was nervous for a minute.
No worries. I'm always here for you guys.
Yeah,
So,
thanks.
there is a question on our chat on the Facebook Live, from Cheryl. What size property are you analyzing here? I think that this is the one that you're showing right now. Is it
Yeah.
actual or a scenario?
So this is not for tax purposes, but this is a real deal I did. So this is actual. These are real numbers. We could get in the weeds on bonus depreciation. So any property acquired in September of 27 or September 17th of 2017, September 27th of 2017. There we go. All the way up to December 31st, 2022. So September 27th, 2017, anything acquired from that date to the end of 2022 gets 100% bonus depreciation. I'll explain what that is. Pre-bonus depreciation, all of the 5-year assets that we'd segregate out, and I'll actually go to some 5-year assets. So here's an example. Here's some 5-year assets, right? Cabinets, millwork, moldings, wood flooring, laminate flooring, security system, building signage, right? Pre the Tax Cuts Jobs Act that I just talked about, 5-year assets would depreciate over 5 years. So we're still accelerating their depreciation, but the benefit wouldn't be big upfront, like in that example I showed you. So 5-year assets would go over 5 years. 15-year assets like this, parking lot, sidewalk, curbs, would go over 15 years, get the depreciation over 15 years, as opposed to 27 and a half. What President Trump did with the Tax Cuts Jobs Act, he said anything with a 20-year useful life or less, you don't have to wait 15 years or 7 or 5. You're going to get all that upfront, 100%. Buildings acquired in 2023 get 80% bonus upfront. Buildings acquired in 2024 get 60% of bonus depreciation upfront. And lastly, buildings in 25 get 40%. The bill to bring back 100% bonus depreciation, which is my campaign, let you guys see that, passed the House already. So in November, they're voting, hopefully it passes the Senate, but then properties retroactively acquired in 2023, backwards, we get 100% bonus all the way up till 2026. So it's kind of exciting times for us. People in my profession are kind of like on the edge of our seats, right? Because if they make it 100% bonus to 2026, it's going to be really good for anybody in real estate across the board. Can I cost segregate any properties from past years which I bought and missed on cost seg? The answer is yes. And if you guys bear with me, I'd love to pull up the study I did where the client acquired the property in 2006. So pretty cool. Let me just move this up. There we go. Okay. Invoice. Here we go. All right, so this is a property local to me here in Hinsdale, Illinois. There's the full report. We'll keep that open. Get that out of the way. So that it's a good question. I wasn't prepared for it, but this is going to be an awesome answer. So, common misconception, most people think they can only do it on new properties. I hear it all the time when I get referred clients and they go, hey, yeah, but I thought you could only do it in the first 5 years. Not true. So here's a real example. Given it's not multifamily, sorry guys, but it's a restaurant, downtown Hinsdale, Illinois. The client bought it in 2006. I was hired to do a cost seg study in 2023. And his normal depreciation, we could figure that out. But bottom line, at the end of the day, we were able to get him a depreciation expense of 191,000 multiplied by his federal tax rate, 37%. It's the highest federal tax rate out. We were able to net the client a $70,000, 988 income tax deferral or reduction. So we reduced our client's income tax on a property he's held since 2006 by 70 grand. We charged him $5,000 to do that. Is it worth 5 grand to keep 70 grand in your pocket? I would argue all day every day. But yes, I think that would answer that question there. I see another one coming in. Does the cost seg analyst work hand in hand with the CPA, since some CPAs don't know about this strategy? The answer is a resounding yes. So I would say 90% of my firm's entire business comes from tax professionals, guys like Bill Withers and the like. And we work hand in hand with them. We work a lot on basis and land allocation issues with the client CPA. The beautiful thing is this is all my firm does. So we don't do tax returns. We don't want to do tax returns. So when we come in to talk with tax professionals, or let's say someone on the call today or on the video chat today wants me to discuss cost segregation with their CPA, it's a soft approach. Hey, this is all we do. We're not trying to take your client or his tax work. It's just a value add. That's all it is. These reports are heavily detailed. It takes my firm about 3 weeks to do a report start to finish. And accountants know they don't have the time to put in 3 weeks with all their other business practices. So we kind of say, hey, we're going to come in, we'll take on the liability. We've done close to 50,000 of these. We know what we're doing, and we're pretty expedient. We're 3 weeks. Maybe people go, hey, it's 3 weeks, but our firm's trying to get it to 2. The average cost seg takes 4 to 6 weeks. So we're ahead of industry standard. Oh, we got another question. Are these reports done remotely or in person? All in-person visits. So there's 150 of me at the firm. We'll get someone out there. We don't do any virtual visits whatsoever. So 100% in person. That is recommended by the IRS. Are you going to go to jail if you get a cost seg done and the site visit was virtual? Probably not. But we like to do it to the letter of the law. And, if they say they want in person, we go in person. So 100% of our site visits are in person. While there's no questions now, Mike, do you mind if I tell the crowd how good you got me the other day when you called and my CEO was in the car real quick?
You don't want to tell that story.
Oh, man. It was good.
I have some questions for you though.
Yeah, please.
Can you use a cost segregation study when you do a 1031?
So it used to be great when the Tax Cuts Jobs Act came out. Let me pull up this report and I'll hit share screen. Give me a sec. The answer is yes, but it's not as awesome as it was back before the Tax Cuts Jobs Act. It was great. Because what a cost seg does is takes real property, which is anything 39 if it's commercial, or 27.5, and we change it to personal property, which is 5, 7, and 15-year assets. So what happened was before bonus depreciation, which we're still in the era of bonus depreciation, it's not 100%, it's 60% currently. But you were able to take personal property and roll it into the 1031, no issues, no questions asked, no big deal. Now that they give us bonus depreciation, all personal property, 5, 7, and 15-year assets will be recaptured, absolutely, at ordinary income tax rates. So you can only roll in your 39-year property. All of the cost seg work will be recaptured. I mean, you got to pay it back at ordinary income tax rates. Usually what guys do is they go, oh, crap, I didn't know that. I said, yeah, sorry, man. But they pay the bill, but then we'll cost seg the building they just traded into to offset that. So is it worth doing? That's to each their own, whether it's worth it or not. I'd say it would depend the size asset you're going to roll into. You'd have to do some arithmetic, right? You'd have to say, hey, what's the recapture look like? And then if we got to pay that back, what's the cost seg look like on the new one? And is that fiscally responsible? If you have investors.
So
is it a yes, no, Mike? No.
Okay, so you'd have to look at it early on and decide, and I always talk about exit plan, right? What's your exit plan on the deal before you ever get to the closing table? So you would actually have to look at it and say, hey, I'm going to do a 1031 exchange on the back
Mhm.
end. It might not make sense to do cost seg. It might just make sense to take straight line depreciation, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up that way. So my team, and I've been doing this 10 years, we don't push clients to do the cost seg or not. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to create this chess piece for you. You and your team can decide when and how to play it. And just like you said, sometimes it's probably better not to do the cost seg. If you got to weigh everything, like you said, and you got to have an exit plan. And if this could dovetail with the exit plan, great. But if not, you know, you got to do
Yeah.
what's best for you.
Right. So here's another question. Will cost seg increase my risk of being audited?
No, I would say no. I would say no with my firm, and it's not a pat on the back or because I'm here, but there's a lot of mom and pop firms that pop up. We've been around since inception. So we literally say in our marketing, our studies have never triggered an audit. However, our clients have been audited and they do want to see what we've done. So the cause for the audit was never, hey, you did a cost seg. These things are done so often now. The IRS is very familiar with this stuff. And if you ever get called out because of a cost seg, it's maybe because someone's inflating numbers. And it's kind of like, hey, if you bought a $2 million building and I'm getting you $1 million of depreciation, there's something up, right? So it does not, I would say it does not increase your chances of being audited. If you're audited, they're going to want to see everything. I mean, they open up all your books. So my firm will be, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's right. Hey, we had a situation, we bought a property in Tampa, Florida. We closed on it in December of 2021.
Okay.
And after we closed on it, we did a cost seg and then did our taxes for 2021. And there was a huge depreciation because 2021, we were still at 100%.
Yes, sir.
And
Yep.
and so we did get audited in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, and they we had to prove up where all this came from and data, and our cost seg company really wasn't helpful. We didn't use you guys.
Sure.
And our accountant though helped walk through it with the IRS. And, after about 8 months, it went away. We got a letter that everything was fine. So,
Good.
I think if you prove the fact, right, and you prove the fact that it's compliant, you're in good standing. So,
Yes, I would say that too. And then just so you know, our firm will, I went through my first audit in 10 years with a client last year. It was actually handled by email. And they said, hey, what's the detail on this? How'd you get this number? We literally screenshot it and emailed it back. And then a week later, they said, hey, you're good. But our firm will handle, you know how you had to get your accountant involved?
yeah.
We'll handle it 100% at no cost. So just as it attains to the report, we're not going to look at anything else.
Yeah, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but the company that we did use, we wouldn't go back to. Because they just wouldn't help us. So, which was kind of.
And that's what I mean. So when you're dealing with the federal government, you want someone experienced. So I don't speak down about any competitor of ours as well. There's some great shops out there. It's usually the bigger ones who are nationwide who've been around, 20 plus years. It's a good sign, right? So the mom and pops may have they may be $1,000 less than us as far as a fee goes. At the end of the day, is it worth it if you got to go through all the crap you went through? Probably not, Yeah.
Hey, I know one of the participants in the audience does ADUs, accessory dwelling units. You know what those are?
Pseudo familiar, but I guess what's the question? And then if I don't know,
Yeah.
I'll
So
shoot you
the
guys.
question is, and I know you kind of touched on, somebody asked, how small is a property to do? But, my question is, if somebody's building an ADU on a property, which is, another, apartment, so to say,
Sure.
is it worth doing a cost seg on that type of a structure?
Yeah, I would just say it depends on the size. So like, can you do it just on a unit that's within a building? No, unless it's like a commercial, rental. But but you could do it on the building and the ADU would get taken into consideration. I guess would
Yeah.
be my answer on that. I did want to show you guys one quick thing. I mean, first, does that answer the question you think, Mike, or no? If
Yeah,
not,
no, I think so. And Jennifer's asking also, if, can you do a single family home if it's valued at $1 million? And I think you could do a single family home if it's valued at 250, right?
yeah,
If
you
you're-
nailed it.
If
Yes.
you're going in and you're doing rehab and, working on a property, then, to do that would be, it just makes sense, right? Especially if you're spending money, you might as well take the depreciation up front, especially if you're flipping, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, with flipping too, I tell guys, I tell clients, I've had clients who told me flat out, hey, I'm going to do the cost seg, but I'm selling next year. And I'd say, why the hell would you do that? Because anything I just deferred for you, you're going to pay back right away. But guys are in unique spots and every story is different. This guy said, hey, I have to do it because I don't have the damn money to pay the IRS. So he did it, but we bought him a year, right, to figure it out. So he was really happy. I did want to show this real quick because there's not many questions, but just to show you guys the level of detail that this stuff's involved. The what I just explained.
Kevin, you got a lot going on that screen there.
I know, right? I know. It's all stuff pertinent, but there's one thing I just had here. It's called RS means. Give me a sec. I just want to show the level of detail this stuff is we get involved in. So here's what the engineers are looking at, just so you guys know. So when people go, oh, my accountant does it. No, he doesn't. And here's exactly why. This is real detail from a big group I work with out of Texas. Wood shelving, plywood with lumber edge, 3/4 thick, 1 foot wide. Right? You see this level of detail? There's pages of this stuff. So I want to address just a quick thing because I hear it all the time. Well, my CPA is doing it for me. Do you think he's doing this? There's no way. So I just like pointing that out anytime I have an audience. This is from a walkthrough, and this is the level of detail we get into. So Mike, back to your audit question too. They said, well, how'd you get this number? Look at what we send them. We send them stuff like this. And their eyes almost pop out of their head. Here's where it's from, Mr. IRS guy. And they go, I don't know what half this crap means. You're good.
So yeah, it's a detailed breakdown, right? It becomes an engineering study of each component.
This is what it is.
Of
Yeah,
the asset.
this is real. Yeah, look at aluminum gutter, stock units, plain 5-inch box, 0.032 inches thick. I mean, it's wild. So I just wanted to get that out there because it's highly technical work. To understand the concept's pretty simple. We're taking things off a 27.5-year schedule, putting it on a 5, 7, or 15. And now by doing that, you accelerated the depreciation. It's that simple to understand. But here's the nitty gritty. So I just wanted to show the viewers this.
Awesome. So let's talk about bonus depreciation. I asked Billy the same question, but what's your opinion about bonus depreciation? Is it going to come back? What's the government going to do around that? And, kind of a second part to that question is, how does bonus depreciation really help, in this cost segregation right now?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll answer the first one first. The government's the government, right? So the bill to bring back bonus depreciation at 100% passed the House. It goes into the Senate in November. My opinion and what our tax guys think, who actually go to the Ways and Means Committees meetings and stuff, say, hey, it's going to pass. And they're saying that because, and again, I wouldn't take anyone's word for this stuff. The government, it can make perfect sense to pass it. It probably means they won't pass it, to be honest. If it didn't make much sense to pass it, they'd probably pass it. But their take on it is, the House and Senate, it's not made of paupers, so to speak, right? These are wealthy people. They'll have real estate in some facet in their portfolios. So the resounding feeling is it'll pass. But again, Billy, I think is who asked the question. I wouldn't count on anybody. We kind of got to wait and see what happens. So don't take my word for it. Don't take your buddy's word for it. You talk to another costing group or CPA. I wouldn't take anyone's word for it. We can't predict the future. That's simple. But how does bonus help? I mean, look at this example here. What would happen here is, since this guy got all the 5 and 15-year assets up front, his depreciation was 355,078. If it wasn't bonus, he would get this benefit broken out over the next 5 years. So it'd be a 5-year benefit. So what's 355 divided by 5? Tell you. 355 divided by 5. Instead of getting 355 up front, he'd get 71,000 a year in accelerated depreciation over the next 5 years. So how does bonus help? Bam, you get it up front, time value of money. Money today is worth more than money down the line. So if you could keep this in your pocket, right? Or keep this in your pocket, as opposed to giving to the federal government, which I don't care if you're left, right, center, they're going to set it on fire or flush it down the toilet. They're just the worst stewards of money of all time. And you could keep this, put towards principal, pay down debt, maybe buy another property, cost seg it again. Just keep kind of that machine rolling. It's incredibly powerful. So, if I'll do the math here, bonus, he got all 5 years of depreciation up front, 71K times 37%. We would have saved him $26,000 a year for the next 5 years, right? So that's why bonus is powerful, right? We're taking
And
5 years.
Is that at 60%?
This example is at 100%.
Okay.
But even when we run one at 60, like Mike, I know we ran one for you previously. This number we're showing is at 60% and this is at 60 already. So you on your end, you don't have to do any calculations. We're showing you we do the math for you, put it that way. Just so you know. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I could pull up a 60, I don't know how much time you got me for, but I could pull up a 60% one and
we got a little bit more, but here's another question. How does cost segregation affect my passive income and passive loss limitations?
Yeah. So I saw Bill talk. So here, I'm going to answer in 2 ways. So passive loss limitation. If you're not a real estate professional, okay. I know, Mike, you asked Bill this question. He didn't touch on it, but I will. You're not a real estate pro, but I'm an investor in your deal, Mike, right? I'm an LP. I'm not a real estate professional. Okay. You're going to do cost seg anyway. What I'm due as far as depreciation, since I'm not a real estate pro, let's just say I'm owed 20% of this, right? The passive limitations, I forget how high it is. I wish Bill was on. He could probably tell us. I could probably Google it real fast, but I forget or who asked the question? Let's ask them. Do you know the limit of passive?
I'm asking the question.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So here, put it this way to touch on this. Okay. I'm due 20% of this. I'm not a real estate pro, just a passive LP. 20% of this, I can't take it all up front because I'm not a real estate pro. I'm going to take whatever the limit is, Mike. Whatever the limit is, I'll be honest, I don't know what the limit is. But then anything else that I can't take because I've reached my offsetting the passive income gets suspended. Okay. What's cool, kind of cool, and I've had clients want to do cost seg even though they're not real estate pros because of this, is the rest of the benefit that I'm owed gets suspended. When you sell the property, it gets released to go against cap gains. So you, as a real estate pro, get the benefit up front to offset taxable income. A passive LP who's not a real estate pro would get the benefit on the back end to offset capital gains. But no matter what, you're getting the full benefit. Just real estate pros get to take it out front to offset the now, and the passive LPs can offset it later. And so I don't know if I helped or made it worse, but that was my answer there.
Yeah. Okay. Tyler's asking, are there any pitfalls to where it would make sense not to do cost segregation?
Great answer, or great question. Sorry, but here's the answer. At the end of the day, it always comes down to recapture, right? So whether you do cost seg or not, no matter what, 100% of the time, there's recapture on depreciation. So let's say my client doesn't do cost seg, but he owns the building. I don't know however many years this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. When he sells, again, he didn't do cost seg. When he sells, 63,821 times 6 will be recaptured. You got to pay it back to the government. So there's always depreciation recapture 100% of the time. Just our recapture 5, 7, 15-year assets is paid back at 37%. It's paid back at your federal income tax bracket. So it's paid back at your ordinary income tax rates. So when do you not do it? If you're going to if this was your building and I got this benefit for you today, and you're going to turn around and sell the building next year, you're going to have to pay this back. The one thing you pay it back. So is that a good financial decision? Probably not. The point of cost seg is to take the tax savings, right? Reinvest it because you know there's going to be a doomsday when you sell, unless you're a legacy holder. You're going to hold forever. That's awesome. But usually people get into real estate to buy, stabilize assets, hold them for a couple of years and sell for a multiple. So the question to be here, if you got time, the pitfall is this: depreciation recapture is real. It's going to happen anytime you sell the asset. So the pitfall would be created by yourself. If you're going to flip an asset, maybe don't do cost seg. I tell clients you want to hold a minimum 3 years after doing a cost seg, because if you saved 130K in taxes, that gives you 3 years to make a nice percentage on that, right? Some interest on it or something, so that when you do have to pay it back, you made some profit off it, right? You're not too worried about it. So 5 years is even better. So the longer you hold, the better it is. If you're gonna sell a property in the first 3 years after doing cost seg, I don't think it would be worth it unless you have an awesome investment where you can make some good dough on it. And now I keep highlighting this number, guys. The number could be 50K, it could be whatever it is. I just highlight this because it's the example we have in front of us.
Which is a great reason. So, everybody here syndicates multifamily. Okay. So
Right.
if you're syndicating multifamily, you're raising capital and your LP says, well, why are we not refinancing before 5 years? Or why are we holding it 7 years? A great reason is because we want to eliminate or lessen the clawback that the
Yes.
IRS is going to do on any of the cost seg depreciation. So,
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
times it becomes, how do we help, maybe twist the story a little bit so that it's favorable for why we're doing something.
Right.
Makes sense.
No, you nailed it. And that's why a lot of funds I work with, they have a 5 to 7 year hold period and then they get out. So, yeah, really good question.
So, if you want to tell the story, go ahead.
Wait, the story of,
When
you
I
know,
got when I got you the other day, so good.
oh yeah, if you guys don't, this is awesome. And then we'll
Hey, you
stop.
guys, you have to understand though, I have a very sick sense
You're
of
listening.
humor. I'm very dry and so Kevin will tell you this story.
Yeah, and good timing. My computer's saying my connection's unstable. But listen to this. I pick up our new CEO. We're private equity backed. We got bought about 8 months ago. The new CEO flies in. He wants to meet some of the top guys. So I pick him up from the airport. We go to get coffee. We park. We're downtown. I get a call from Mike, and I said, picked up. Hey, Mike, I'm in the car with my CEO. So don't say anything vulgar. I'm just joking with him. He goes, hey, yeah, that's fine. But what happened the other day? I mean, what do you mean? He goes, you totally screwed us. What the heck happened the other day? And I was like, oh my gosh, take me off speaker. I don't want to say what I have to in front of your CEO. I don't want to embarrass you. At this point, I'm turning red in the face. I'm going, what are you talking about? And then he just starts laughing. I mean, my CEO looked at me too, like, what the hell did you do to this guy? And Mike just starts laughing. He totally got me. And it was very embarrassing. And Mike, I thought you were dead serious because I was crapping my pants. I'm going, was the summit yesterday and I blew him off or something? That's literally what I thought. That's what I thought.
So did that help you bond a little bit more with your CEO?
It did. It did. Yeah. Yeah. And he goes, how long has he been a client? I said, I've worked with him recently a couple of times, the past 2 years. And I know you used us previous too, but yeah, it was a great, it humanized my CEO, right? He started laughing and he brought it up 3 times. We had dinner. I got home at 10 o'clock at dinner, he goes, man, that guy got you, man. And I was like, I know. Three
That
other
was
times he brought it up.
that was perfect. That was perfect. Hey,
It was
let me
very
ask
well.
a question. So I
Sure.
know you talked about older properties. So how far back can you go and do a cost seg
So
on a property?
what I tell guys, it's just like that example I had up with the restaurant, right? I tell guys, hey, I didn't know if there's going to be any meat on the bone on this thing, right? I had no idea. So I said, hey, it's free to run the numbers. Why don't you let me run the numbers and I'll show you guys, this is an estimate. This is how it looks. It's not the final report or anything, but it's an estimate. And if the numbers look good, you show it to your accountant. If he approves it, let's do it. So that's what I always say. And there's no date. I mean, that guy bought in 06. We're in 2024, although I was hired in 23 for, what is that, 17 years? We went back that far and there was meat on the bone. Now, if his asset, let's say his asset, this isn't what I wanted. Let's say his basis was 300K on an asset. Now, is it worth it to go back 17 years? I'm sure the numbers would show it's likely not, but let's look at it, right? There's no harm in looking. It's no sweat off the prospective client's back. It's all on me. So I'll spend the time and have a look. No issue. And I was going to show you guys.
So here's what I would say, most people on the call are, in real estate, have single family assets, have small multifamily, large multifamily deals. If you have a deal out there that you think you can go back and you plan to hold it for a few more years, call Kevin and go back and at least have the conversation on if it makes sense to do cost seg. Because if you can put a few more dollars in your pocket, I always say to people, I say, there's three things we want to accomplish: cash flow, long-term generational wealth, and what are the tax planning strategies? And if we can do those for our investors or for the investment and put more cash in our pocket, then it makes sense to do that.
Sure. And what I'm showing you guys too here is my little sub site. It's not our official website. I could show you guys that too, but this is like a landing page to say, hey, good point Mike just made. I bought a building in 2010, right? 2010 for 300K. Let's see if it's worth it. You could just go to costsegkev.com. And I'm sure, Mike, you're going to share our info and all that.
Yeah, Rain's put it in the chat, but everybody will have it.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, if you go here, this is so simple. Check it out. Bam. Right? This is not like filling out an insurance form. Name, email, what'd you pay for it? When did you buy it? What kind of asset is it? And then get your quote. And that's it. We do it. And there you go. There's also an awesome FAQ here too. Common misconceptions, grow your business, financial benefit, etc. But it's a nice little site. It's one pager. Everything comes direct to me. I get a constant alerts on that, which is good. So I won't skip over you, or I never get too busy, which is a good thing too. We have a robust team. And then not only that, what I love to tell guys, I have a lot of people who actually call me or find me on Google. And I say, oh, it's Kevin. And they go, it's actually you. I said, yeah, what do you expect? I don't know, an assistant or something. No. So call, text me anytime. I'm here to help. All I want to do is be a resource. And I will always shoot you straight. And so.
Hey, are there other asset classes that you can do cost seg studies on?
So it's literally any investment asset. I've done golf courses, marinas, hotels, you name it. Honest to God, you name it. Gun ranges, things like that. Mobile home parks, airports. It's got to be a taxable entity, right? So no nonprofit stuff and no municipalities.
What about precious metals or gas and oil?
That's a good one. I've personally never have, but I don't see how, unless the land has all these hookups, like a golf course, right? It's all grass, but under the ground, they have all these hookups for the water, electricity, things like that. Personally, I don't know. I'll shoot an email out just out of curiosity and say, hey, have we ever done any oil and gas or precious metals? But to my knowledge, no, but it doesn't mean it's a no.
Right.
Yeah.
Rain, Jennifer's asking for the link to the landing page. Can you post that in the chat so everybody can grab that? To
Yeah.
catch Kevin. Well, Kevin, any last insights or anything you want to leave investors with this morning?
Can you hear me well? It got choppy
Yeah,
there.
no,
Can you
you're
hear me?
good. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no. Any last insights? Personally, no. I'm sure once we hang up, I'm gonna go, crap, I should have mentioned that. But I really appreciate you having me, Mike. Thanks for letting me tell everyone that joke. That was phenomenal. And uh, I'll put my stuff in the chat too for
We
you
got
guys.
jokes though, that's for sure. So.
Yeah, and then I'll probably hang out for a little bit too. I'm just gonna take the video off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hang around because the next panel coming up is going to be on capital raising, and then we have a
Sweet.
lot of good speakers this afternoon. So definitely hang around for sure. You're more than welcome.
Okay,
So
cool.
glad to see
Yeah.
you. Thanks for being here. All right, everybody. We are done with our first two speakers. Before we bring up the panel, Rain, let's do a couple things. It's still early. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Why don't we do a 10-minute break? Let's go ahead and end the Facebook and social media live streams. Anybody who's on social media who wants to see the rest of today and participate in capital raising and those conversations, as well as Neil Bawa or Vina Jetty later this afternoon, go to multifamily24.com and get registered to join the event. But we're going to end the social media live streams right now. Rain, why don't you put the clock up for 10 minutes? Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back and we'll introduce Cindy and the panel.